County today. First item on the agenda is to approve the previous meeting minutes.
So moved, Mr. Chairman. Second.
Motion discussion. Either you two have anything to say about that? We're a little short-handed here today, so hopefully we can make some decisions and move forward. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Item number 2 is to receive and place on file drainage repairs, and I have none turned in to me this morning, so we'll move on. Item number 3, receive and place on file letter of resignation from Webster County Attorney Corey Kuhn Coleman, effective August 29th, 2014.
Chairman, I move item 3. I'll second.
Motion second. Any discussion on this?
I would like to thank the board, the department heads, and the law enforcement officials that I had the privilege of working with, and the members of the community that I served.
Okay. Well, we want to thank you for your years of service and tenure with Webster County. Wish you and your family the best of success as you move forward in your new ventures. And I think that the board will be discussing in future meetings our intentions on temporary replacement or assignment of office manager, whatever, to ensure that there is some degree of hierarchy remains in the office because of the short term until the election. So all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item number 3 passes. Item number 4, approve the salary adjustment for Jordan Brackey, Assistant County Attorney, $73,726.38, effective September 1st, 2014.
So moved, Mr. Chairman. Second.
Motion second. Do we have any comments or discussion?
Corey, could you share with us what this is?
Sure, this is Mr. Brecky's step increase within our office. He's been with the office for approximately 5 years. He has a somewhat awkward anniversary date with it being in March. I wanted to wait to see what would happen with the compensation board's recommendations and then how that affected the rest of the budget prior to putting his raise on the agenda. It's on the agenda now because I wanted to highlight that Webster County is exploring the possibility of a drug court, and Mr. Brackey was personally requested by Chief Judge Wilkie to head that effort for our office. He's also the attorney in charge of family treatment court in addition to regular juvenile court matters. And I wanted to speak of his service and the drug treatment court initiative that is being in the county. I think there's reason for the merit. It is also in the budget.
Questions? All in favor of approving these salary adjustments? If you're probably saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 5, approve hiring and employment of Brenda Goodner, child care nurse consultant, effective August 28, 2014, at the rate of $18 per hour as per the recommendation of Terry Prescott, Director of Public Health.
Move item 5, Mr. Chairman. Second.
Motion second. Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And finally figured out I don't need to ask for opposed. Item passes. Item number 6, receive and place on file the following manure management plan updates. Allen Sile in section 22, Lake Green Township in Calhoun County. Michael Pearson growth site in section 15, Lost Grove Township. Larson site in section 28, Gallery Township. Nell's home site in section 25, Polk Township. And West Roland Pork Incorporated in section 9 of Roland Township.
Mr. Chairman, I move item number 6. Second.
Motion second. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 7 is to approve support for the City of Fort Dodge's application for Rag Ride 2015.
Mr. Chairman, I move item 7. Second, Mr. Chairman.
Motion is second. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. This is the time that you've all been waiting for, your opportunity to address the board with items that are not on the agenda.
I'll just give a quickie, Lundgren Wind Project report, met at 9 o'clock. They have completed 79 turbines are erected. That means they have 28 remaining. And 40 of those 79 are online. And they hope to have the remaining 28 erected by on or before September 10th.
challenges with the roads or anything?
We had a little discussion on that this morning. I mean, there are two known spots of damage on paved routes, and currently they tried to partially fix one, and the other one we got signing on, because in order to fix it right, we need to bring in a contractor who's tied up, so we got that mitigated by signs. And then we did have some pretty good conversations with granular roads and maintenance of those. The plan is that the foreman will, Dale Anderson specifically going to meet with Tony and another individual from Fratellon who they've hired. They're gonna, today or tomorrow, they're gonna drive and look at roads and kind of talk things over on the areas that are concerned by us. And then eventually there's gonna be a, you know, a transfer of maintenance and then acceptance of their condition. With this getting this late in the year, you know, I'm kind of hoping that we'll get things preliminary squared away, but I hopefully final acceptance. I guess I plan to wait till approximately June 1 or something like that next year before I'll completely sign off. Because I think, you know, there's been a few things with the roads where the surface has been marred and all that, and the road's been widened, but there's some of the hard pan has been broken through, and when you have that happen, that takes a lot more maintenance and remedial action to solve. So and that might not really show up until next spring. And I guess I don't feel we need to sign off until we know that anything that was caused by them is absolutely fixed or reimbursed to us by them.
We are able to wait until June 1st to do that.
Well, we have this road agreement, and the road agreement, you know, it says until we sign off, we are going to accept everything. So I'm, you know, we'll have to see how the weather plays out the rest of this year and how the timing of their completion of all their work.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Mike Webster, I live in Fort Dodge here, and I'd like to just maybe have a little discussion about property taxes. I just got my tax bill and I noticed my taxes went up again, and I figured, you know, no big deal, that's been happening ever since I've been in this house. I've been here 10 years. When I bought the house, it was like $600 some bucks, and now they're like $29.12. So I guess it didn't really surprise me that my taxes went up until I went to the county assessor's webpage and started looking up some of the other, my neighbors. I noticed they all went up, and I started looking up some of the businesses. So I pulled like 5 or 6 businesses, and I noticed that their taxes had went down anywhere from like 25, 26% to like 48%. So I sent a email to Darrell Bill, and evidently there's, I was kind of concerned about the loss of revenue in the county, and evidently there's not going to be a loss of revenue because the money's going to be replaced from the state's general fund.
We hope they're in back row.
Is everybody following me on this?
Yep, yep, we're aware of what's going on. What you're observing is the fact that up until this point, commercial property has paid at 100% valuation. Residential property has paid at about, what is it, 60%?
Yeah.
Of valuation. So the valuation of residential property has been rolled back. So for years, commercial property has been paying property tax at the full rate. This year, the state implemented it. The first thing they did is they put in a tax credit. So every person, and this tax credit right now is fully funded by the state of Ohio. I'm not saying I'm in favor or against, this is just the way it is. And then there's a rollback on the valuation of, after 2 or 3 years, it's a maximum of 10% valuation. So if Fletcher Wood Products, for example, has a building that's valued at $200,000, after the full valuation rollback, will be taxed on $180,000 of that. And up until this time, they've been taxed at the full rate. So this is the state's attempt to create a more attractive environment for commercial properties to located in the state file.
Well, I understand that, but I don't think it should be put on the burden of residential, people that are trying to afford to stay in their houses, especially the senior citizens in this county. They're on fixed incomes, and every time, I mean, it's hard enough when the groceries go up and stuff like that, but every time you turn around, every year the property taxes are going up. And my next point would be, you know, the assessed value. We had a deal a while back, several years back, when the city ended up buying one of the businesses in town and paid them about 6 times what the property was assessed for. And I guess my point is, every 2 years, state law says that properties are supposed to be reassessed, so that should catch any discrepancies on what people are being assessed. There's a lot of businesses in this town that are way under assessed. You know, and I'm not, you know, I don't have no degree, or I'm not, you know, I haven't passed an assessor's test. Anybody can get on the assessor's webpage. I mean, there's businesses in this town that are paying, I just saw one that's paying $580 a year. That's property tax on a business. And it's down by the roundabout. And I started checking around just in that same neighborhood what other businesses are paying. And they're paying like $2,000. Well, you know, there's a big discrepancy. I don't mind paying my fair share of taxes, but if they're gonna assess my neighbor a third of what his property is worth and assess mine for 100% of what mine's worth, there's something wrong. You know, and I guess what I'm trying to say is I would assume that the board's supposed to have some kind of oversight over the assessor's office. I don't think the assessor's office is doing their job. And I think somebody needs to step in there and make sure that we're all assessed properly and equally, and eliminate these discrepancies. And there's some major discrepancies, and I don't want to mention any names of any of these businesses because that's not they're not paying me to do their job. But it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. You know, and if I own a piece of property and it's assessed for $15,000, my neighbor owns the 2 properties the same size as mine. I would assume that the lot, just the assessed value on the lot should be double what mine is. It shouldn't be $1,000 more or $2,000 more. If I own an acre of land, my neighbor owns 2 acres of land, and I'm being assessed at, say, just to keep it simple, $10,000, and he's being assessed at 12. But I think there's something wrong there. I think if he owns 2 acres, he should be assessed for $20,000. If an acre's worth 20 or 10,000, it's worth 10,000, whether I got 1 or 10. There's a lot of discrepancies, and I'd be glad to sit down with anybody after this to talk about, point out some of these. And I only took, 20 minutes of my time to get on the assessor's page and found these discrepancies. I'm not afraid to say it to the assessor. She's not doing her job, and if she's not doing her job, she needs to be replaced. I don't mind paying taxes. Let's just be fair about it.
When do we have another assessor's commission?
Well, they usually meet quarterly. And for your information, the assessor is directed by a board that is independent of the Board of Supervisors. We have 1 representative on that board. Every school district in this taxing area has a representative on that board. And all of the municipalities have a representative on that board. It's that group because they're the ones that have, that's where they direct the revenues through taxation. They're the ones that oversee the assessor and what that office does. But we will be more than happy to relay this on to the assessor's office. And any specific questions regarding valuations of properties?
Well, they're supposed to be reassessed every 2 years.
Yes.
And from what I've read, there's 3 ways of assessing a property. There's one is the market approach, and that's what properties that have recently sold comparable to mine. The second one's a cost approach, what it would cost to rebuild my building. And the third one is an income approach. Are they keeping everybody on the same one of these? Are they picking and choosing who they want to use which one? And because there's some properties that are assessed in this town that are businesses for $40,000. And I'm telling you right now, you can't rebuild them for $250,000. You just can't.
I will tell you, I believe, and Carol, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that there are specific formulas that all county assessors have to use and follow that are mandated by the state. And the state does do auditing and checking to make sure that the assessors are following these guidelines. Is that not correct?
Yes, and I will add that there's a different formula based on the different classes.
Now,
So residential is, yes, comparable lender taxes.
And our assessor subs that duty out to another business to do though. She has a vanguard, I believe, to go out and do the reassessments, correct?
Where he comes up with every 2 years, that would be the state
The state.
issued equalization.
Equalization,
Now, the assessor has to come within a certain percent of that equalization. Otherwise, or with the state's estimated value. In order, if it isn't, then of course you see a huge fluctuation in it. Otherwise, appraisals or reappraisals are every 10 years. But that every 2 years comes from the state and the equalization.
But anytime somebody has a concern like this, I think would be a great time for Jeanette to sit down with Mike and look at these and find out if there is something being missed or if there's an area of town that hasn't been addressed correctly. Because if there's disparity, like you said, it has to be correct.
Some of the higher taxes that you see this year, you look at the levies for the governing bodies under that taxing district, and actually that commercial property rollback does shift the rest of the classes of property, just like it's done with residential and ag over the years. That's gonna happen, the full effect of it, nobody really knows. That's more driving force as well.
And it's not just the commercial, another big effect was the apartment buildings this last year.
That, yeah, well,
Because-
that's not going
because of-
in yet.
That's gonna be huge.
That's next year, though, correct?
But I think you have two different things I see. One is the assessed value. You have a question about assessing things properly, but then you go to the next step of what's levied. And your taxes are levied differently for all city and schools and everything. So some have gone way up on your taxes this year, some haven't, you know. But the assessment's just a very, it's very complicated on how to do that, you know. And so, and I, for years, have said it's not a fair system in Iowa, but Jeanette assesses properties basically every year. She looks at it herself for office. Then Carol's right, every 2 years, the state comes in and does their equalization, which I've always argued is totally an unfair way to do things. Because all they basically do is take all the sales in the county, and that adds up to one figure. And they take all the assessments on those same properties, and that's a figure. And if it's different, which when things were really increasing, you know, back in the 90s, let's say, they'll take that percentage, and she's mandated to put that percentage on every property in the county. Which means if you were properly assessed that year, now all of a sudden you're 10% higher than you should be. And it's supposed to equalize it out over a long period of time, and it just simply doesn't. So to me, I personally think it's a flawed system, but it's kind of, I mean, it's a law, it's what we're starting with. But, and I agree with you. I think maybe you need to talk with Jeanette too, you know.
I would say that.
And just to clarify, and not that we don't have responsibility, but the public isn't aware that we don't control the assessor. She's not one of our offices. She's a standalone office.
You
We
don't
just
let
have
it
one.
pass.
And we do, she taxes herself, and all that. So just to clarify for the public, we don't have control of her office. We have 1 of 3 votes basically.
So I need to go talk to her.
Well, that's probably to get the most direct answers.
Yes. And then we will take
That feedback.
We all go to, we changed, she used to have yearly meetings. We've changed that to quarterly meetings now, so that we can have a better handle on guiding her through that board. So we're more aware of what's going on in there, and we'll definitely take your concerns, and they're not new. basically, we've all known these concerns for a long time. And we can continue to take that to her. But what I'm kind of trying to say is, to some extent, the way the system's set up, her hands are tied on the way it's got to be done. And every 10 years, like Carol said, they actually fund and pay for Vanguard to come in and look at every property, so they catch who's built things that they don't know about. And that's intended to get it closer to.
When's the next 10 years up?
We've got to be getting close. I would guess it was 6 or 7 years ago off the top of my head last time we did it.
But you're not the first person to come in and say, hey, you know, just in my 3-block neighborhood, there's huge difference between mine and my neighbors a house block away. So I think you have the right to sit down with her and have her explain that to you, so you know, hopefully there's an answer, and if not, it needs to be addressed.
So is the intent to get it to where the businesses aren't paying any taxes and the residential customers are picking up the tab?
I can't speak for the state. They're the ones that did all that. I don't believe that that's the intent. They only did it 10% right now. But it is going to shift it. And like I said, starting next year, the residential's going to kick in, which means all apartment buildings over 4plexes were taxed basically as commercial properties before at 100%. Well, now they're going to be considered residential. It's going to get that huge rollback. And so that's going to hit towns really hard. And then the bottom line is, whatever the assessment is, it's levied at that, because we have to tax at a certain amount. So it is just shifting it. The levy isn't, your tax isn't really changing. That's changed by our budgets. But it is going to shift the burden, from what I understand, from commercial to residential.
You see that effect this
Well, the
year.
problem with that is there's a lot of rental properties in this town. I was told that it might be like 3,000 properties. I mean, that's gonna be a big ding if their taxes go down.
It's going to be huge.
And I'm living on a block where there's rental properties and they're the eyesore of the neighborhood. And if I had my choice, and if our neighbors would sign a petition to keep them off our block, we would. Just drive around the city and see how bad some of these properties are. And I've tried going to the mayor's office and talking to the inspector, and it doesn't seem they want to do their job either. And I'm sorry to say, but I'm seeing that there's a lot of government agencies that are in the same boat, where our tax dollars are not being represented properly and they're not doing their jobs. And, you know, this property tax thing is just kind of getting under my skin, and I don't think it's right. If I find out that the next thing is that the rental property sitting next to me that's dilapidated and not being upkept, is gonna all of a sudden start paying less tax than me, and I'm not gonna be happy about that. And I don't think anybody should be happy, and I think it's about time everybody say enough's enough. I mean, you know, it's bad enough the richer get richer, and it's harder and harder for the working person to make a living. And I just think, you know, that's why it's so important for everybody to go out there and vote.
Well, I think it's important that you make sure that you speak to the legislators, because they are the ones that create the law that affects these things.
Yeah.
We, as your more local representatives, have to deal with the effects of the changes in the law that they make, and deal with, you know, the monies that are left over and things like that. So, it's the guys like the senators and the representatives are the ones that really can affect the change.
Yeah.
And believe me, we've been screaming about it because it does affect our income as a county and how we can pay for services.
They promise they're gonna backfill that 10% and everything, but for 3 years.
For 3 years.
And
After
what are
that,
we supposed to do after that?
Well, the problem is every time your taxes go up, what you're doing is you're creating a bunch of people that aren't gonna buy permits. You know, and I see that in my neighborhood. People are doing all kinds of remodeling and they're not buying a permit, because they know if they buy a permit, their taxes are going up. So how do you police that? And then the other thing is a lot of people are moving out of town because the taxes are getting too high. And I don't think the city needs that. You know, we should be doing something to keep people in the city and not moving out to the outskirts. So, and thank you for your time, I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming. Otherwise, it's been a really short meeting today. Oh, we got another one. All right.
governor's award recognition for Friendship Haven last week. It was, I just want to publicly express that he came up and gave the healthcare center an award last week, and it's quite a facility we have out there. So wanted to mention that they received a pretty good statewide award. I've got a meeting that I'm really looking forward to tomorrow morning. Our hazmat commission is going to go out and tour CJ and Cardell, and even though we've done that multiple times ourselves, this is going to be dealing with getting ready for hazard, the hazards that could come out there. So it's going to be kind of a different tour, which will be exciting. I'll report on next week. And then the third thing is I just want to tell the sheriff that I think the board appreciates the things he went through last week with the escapes, something that was surely not anticipated, a very kind of strange, fluky thing that happened over there, but they were right on top of it, corrected the situations, and I think handled it extremely well. So that's it.
Did you want to assure the public that we're not digging an escape tunnel?
Yes. Yeah, an update on the bid. If anybody goes through the alleys, we're doing some work. As the news media was set up in the alley, it looked like, what are they doing digging along there? It's just coincidental. But we have some major projects that we're trying to do this year, dealing with some drainage around that building and pipes and new air conditioning units and all kinds of things that we're pre-planning. That's what the trench there is, that yes, we're not creating an escape hazard that way. So, but I do appreciate the public, along with First Avenue South, it's all tore up. You're going to see our alleys a little bit tore up and inaccessible for the rest of the year too. So.
Okay. Last thing on the agenda is I'll take a motion to allow claims.
So second.
A motion and a second, all in favor? Motion passes. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Second.